Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to have with me today Natalie Dormer. She is a podcast growth and monetization strategist who helps podcasters turn engaged listeners into real business results without more content, more ads, or even burnout. And so for over a decade, she's worked behind the scenes of hundreds of programs and memberships, and she noticed a common pattern. We're going to talk about what that pattern is regarding building trust and authority. But I would love to just really welcome you, Natalie. I have so much I can say about you, but I would love to hear you introduce yourself and
Sure.
what got you into podcasting and what you do for podcasters.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Demetria. So, quickly about me, I've been in business for 20 years. I run a business, actually, two businesses with my husband and business partner. We really started, my background is in tech. I'm a software engineer. I've worked in the Silicon Valley for 10 years before moving back to France and start our own business. We've started a business building websites, and then it turned into online course platforms and then memberships. And we've done over 300 memberships, working one-on-one with people. And as we were working, trying to improve the e-learning, we also ran into issues with, list building. And I know a lot of people are using podcasts to build visibility and, grow an audience. And as I'm sure you know, and a lot of podcasters know, it is difficult to connect with your listener just because they are listening somewhere. You don't know who they are. You might find out, the only thing that you pretty much know is your downloads, right?
Right.
And that's what people measure. But the measure of downloads says nothing about what the podcast brings to the business. So that's really one thing that we've been working on is what can we do to bridge that gap, to try to connect with the listener that might be ready to hear more, right?
Yeah.
So that's really how Podcast Lead Flow really came about, because podcasting is an amazing tool, but it's not a strategy in itself. It's not, right?
That's true.
So, and even when people say, I'm podcasting because I want to build visibility in front of who? What kind of visibility? Because you can be an entertainer. That doesn't mean that people are going to connect
Exactly.
with you, right? So, podcasting with purpose basically is, the people that were really helping are people that doing it intentionally,
Yeah.
with this end in mind, that they want to attract the person that is going to be ready to work with them, whether this is in a membership, in a group program, one-on-one, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, that's exactly who we talk to here on this podcast are solopreneurs and entrepreneurs who want to utilize podcasting for part of their business strategy. And it can be part of their funnel, it can be part of their system, their ecosystem. And so there's so many different pieces and revolving parts to this. And everyone has a different reason that they're podcasting, right? So, and I just love that what you're doing is helping to bring clarity to podcasters who are doing it for this reason, and just helping us not to be scattered but to be focused on what matters in this podcasting strategy. And strategy is a key word. That's something that you just brought up. So podcasting itself, you said, is not the
It's a
strategy.
tool. It's just a tool, right?
It's just a
Yeah.
tool. I love that. Okay, when we are creating, so many podcasters, we love creating our podcasts. We're creatives. We love creating content. We're content creators. But so many are still not seeing real business results. And so from your perspective, what's the biggest missing link between someone just hitting play, listening to the show, and then or actually taking that next step to get involved with what the host is providing on the show?
Yeah. So I hear this a lot, because when people are starting to podcast, they have a message, right? They want to share something. They have an idea of what they want the episode to look like, like they feel like they have a voice, right? They can share their message. And this is all great. Some people love to inspire and things like that. But if you want to be strategic with your podcast and you want to get leads, then you also need some specific episodes that are intentionally built for
Mm,
that.
right.
So so you can still have fun with some episodes,
Yeah,
bring guests and share stories, and like, because that's how you build, the relationship, you build the trust, you're more likable, you're more relatable, right? And
exactly.
then you have some, what I called, asset episodes,
Mm-hmm.
which are really key episodes where you get a chance to speak to something that they need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to hear in order to take just the next step? You're not trying to sell them anything,
Right.
but you know that, like, if you're doing intentionally and you have a program or product or service to sell,
Mm-hmm.
you're a solution to a problem that they have, right?
Right.
So if you think with the end in mind and you reverse engineer that, what do they need to hear from you in order to feel that you have a solution and that solution might work for them?
Yes.
Okay. And that solution has worked for other people in the same situation. Right. So it's that strategy. And then from there, when you reverse engineer, what do they need to hear? So for example, if you have a framework, a method, say you're working with one-on-one with people, or even if you have a course or a program, a group, a
Mm.
coaching program of some sort, if you have like a framework, then you can have episodes that really highlight the structure, right? And why it is important and why it needs to happen, in that specific order, and get them to think, okay, could this work for me? How does this apply to me, right? And even providing them tools, which is kind of like what Podcast Sleep Flow does, the product we created to really create that conversation with people. So I think that's what people are afraid of when we talk about podcast strategy. They feel like, oh my gosh, it's going to become boring because she's going to ask me to sell on my podcast. Absolutely not. You can have all the fun that you want,
Right.
but make sure that you have those key episodes that you need to treat like lead magnets. You know how
Mm.
we have like a PDF, a guide, right?
Exactly.
This
Yeah.
is very generic. This is everybody gets the same stuff. Give me your email, I'll give you the guide, right? The 5 step to something, right? Well, you can see these specific asset episodes as lead magnets on steroids,
I love that.
right? Right?
Yeah.
Because they are not just PDF to read, they actually hear you. And then if you provide a tool below for them to go further, that's where you connect with the listener.
That's so good. Seeing our episodes as key assets for a business, having those asset episodes, having the fun interviews and all the fun things we do
You're
as
welcome.
well, but those key assets. And then also, I just love that you said there, it's like, can you say that again? On steroids. It was, I loved it. Lead
Lead
magnets.
magnet on
Yeah.
steroid, right?
Yeah, that's so good. That's so
Yeah.
good. And I think if we look at it that way, we will be more aware of what we're doing and more intentional with every episode. And I think that's such an important part of podcasting, that we're not just, showing up and doing the work without a strategy in place. And that is a beautiful
Yeah.
strategy. I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit about your podcast, what you do on your show, and like kind of what lights you up with your podcast, what makes you happy about it.
Yeah. So my podcast is actually about memberships.
Mm.
It's called the Supercharge Your Membership Show, and I have 137 episodes.
Wow.
And at some point, I stopped it. And I stopped it because I could not see what the podcast was bringing to my business. So basically, clients I was working with were telling me, I listen to your podcast. I like it. It's no fluff. It's to the point. Like, some of episodes are like really short, like 10 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they loved it. So I'm like, okay, they love it. And then I have listeners, I don't know who they are.
Right.
Right. So I'm like, so you lose your motivation. A
Yeah,
lot of people quit on podcasting because they don't see an end result. It's fun
exactly.
for a while, right? But if you don't see the ROI, then at some point, you're probably going to stop
Yeah.
doing it, right? So that's really what happened with my podcast. I'm like, I'm not feeling it anymore. I stopped, right? Because I didn't have a strategy and I couldn't see how. That was like 2 years ago, right? I couldn't see how um, I could continue on, because that's also when I started to think like, well, I don't have a strategy. Like, what am I doing? What am I talking about?
Wow. Okay.
Is that making sense?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so that's basically what I did. I totally quit. So now what I'm doing is I'm in the process of starting a new podcast
Okay.
for podcasters and podcasting agencies,
Hmm.
but with a very clear goal, with a strategy, which is to connect and build relationships and partnerships with other people that are helping podcasters, right? So then I can reverse engineer and I can think, okay, what are 15 episodes that I can create
Wow.
that are going to touch all these key points? And that's basically all I need. The rest, I can interview people,
Yeah. Yeah.
share stories and things like that, right? So it's also important, I think, to really realize that it doesn't have to be all episodes. So if you want to have the fun, you can still have the fun.
I think so. I think you're right. And I just love that you were transparent in sharing your story, how you got sort of discouraged along the way
Yes.
because I mean, it really podcasting can feel lonely if
Okay.
we're speaking out into a void and we don't get any feedback, and it's hard to know what that ROI is if we're not getting the feedback, right? We're delivering
Absolutely.
great content, but not necessarily getting the
Yeah.
type of engagement that we want. And it's very different than being on YouTube or on Instagram or anything else. Like it's not a social media platform, so to speak, but
Yeah.
we can find ways to create that engagement, but just posting an episode doesn't quite do it. And so there's so much to creating those audios and videos for our audience that there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I see how like you've revamped your strategies so that now you're actually doing it in a meaningful way that makes sense for you.
Yeah. And I think like what people might not realize as well, I have done this, is they look at the big podcast that have tons of downloads, people that are sharing, and then they have like 2, 3 ads before you even get into the meat of the content, and people are still listening,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they're like, we think we have to do that in order for the podcast to be successful. Absolutely not.
No.
You have to define what is your definition of success for your podcast. Because if you're intentional like this, you actually don't need a lot of downloads. You
You
don't,
don't. That's true.
right? You don't. What you need is to make sure you speak to the right people and you repurpose. Maybe we'll talk about that in another question you have. But
Yeah.
the key is in the strategy is to repurpose, because if you share on podcasts and Apple, you're building their platform. You're not building yours.
That's so true. That's so true. Repurposing. That's yeah, let's get into that for a little bit. So what are some tips you have about repurposing? I know for me, my podcast is like every episode I take it, I break it down into different places that I want to share that content. So I'm not just sharing it on Apple Podcasts, but it's going to be, of course, all the platforms, but I'm going to use my blog, which is my home base, right? I'm going to use my own digital property to enhance what I'm doing. I'm going to use YouTube. I'm going to use different strategies for that. But I'd love to hear some of your ideas of repurposing, and also if you can kind of integrate where AI can be supportive for us
Yeah,
in that
absolutely.
repurposing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when we talk about repurposing the episode, like you get shorts and you share them
Mhm.
everywhere, that's all great. There is another level of repurposing that people don't realize, is that when you have one of these asset episodes that is like, it's a great lead magnet, when the people are listening to that, the right person is going to want the next step, right?
Mhm.
Then you want to treat it like a lead magnet. That means you share it, You might run some ads to it. You definitely put it in your nurture sequence to your lists,
That's
right? Because it's not just a list builder, it's a connection builder. That means that if you have someone on your list that's been on your list even for a while, right? Hopefully you are giving them value regularly. Well, you can add one of these into your sequence,
Yeah.
right? I have this great example. Alicia, she's running the Conscious Edge. That's a podcast. She's a leadership coach. We did one episode, with Podcast Flu using AI. We can talk about AI as well. She added the episode to a nurture sequence. Someone from her list that was already on her list listened to the episode, filled out the form, got some great value from the form, and booked a call, purchase iTicket program.
That's
Right?
how it works.
Like,
That's awesome.
she's like,
Yeah.
I don't, and she's like, I actually don't need that many.
Right.
She said, because I don't want my calendar to be filled, but it's about quality over quantity. And it's specificity. We say niching, but it's also being very, very specific and intentional, right?
Exactly.
So when you do this, like you think with the end in mind and you're strategic, again, you don't need that many downloads, but you need to make sure that when you have an asset and it is good, you milk it, right?
Yeah.
You keep using it, right? So it's maybe there is a post a month that goes into your favorite social media, right? Different angles, right? There is a slider, there is like all these, because a lot of people, they think that the episode has a 1 week live shelf, and then after a week they are busy working on the next episode, right? You need to start treating this key episode as asset, just like when you create a new lead magnet, right? A new guide or a new blueprint or whatever your freebie is, right?
Right.
It's the same, right? Except that it's on steroids because they can hear you. And when they can hear you, there is extra emotions that they can feel, right?
Yeah.
They can feel if you're passionate about what you're talking about. They can feel if they have a feeling that you know what you're talking about, like, right? That this is,
Right.
so these are all things that accelerate the trust, right? And build a relationship. Now, when you get into AI, do you want to talk about integrating AI?
Let's
Okay.
talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the way we integrate AI is not to replace the human, right? It's to amplify and to accelerate building the relationship. So the way this works is, when you have a podcast episode and you can have a call to action, right? So first you should have one call to action. If you
Right.
say, follow me on Instagram and then comment and then go there like 3, 4, yeah, you've lost them. Or if you rely on your show notes that have 10 other links, you've lost them as well, right? So you can have those. They're great for SEO, right? But on your asset episode, you treat it like a lead magnet again. So, but instead of having just enter your name and email, and I'll send you my guide, and then they are maybe going to look at the guide. If they look at it, they might say, well, but how does it apply to me? Right? Because we all do that. Damn, how does it apply to me? You can use AI to, so we have this tool that automatically analyzes the episode, is going to come up with 3 questions that it can ask the listener in a form to gather context about where they're at, what they've tried. And based on that, it is going to send them an email that is unique to them with one piece of advice or coaching based on where they're at.
Wow.
It's literally having the listener sitting next to you. You ask them a couple of questions. So what have you tried? Where are you at? And giving them a piece of advice based on that. So now every listener has a different lead magnet sent to them by email based on what they shared.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Personalizing the experience.
yeah, that's what AI allows you to do, because it's analytical power where it's able to very quickly, you take an episode and really just in a couple of clicks, is going to say, those are the questions, and you can keep them or you can change them because you have your own brain
Right.
and knowledge that you can add to, right? It's only basing it on the episode. So the more tactical and it is going to be and actionable, the better the output is going to be, right? But the idea is to really to quickly being able to turn that episode into a lead magnet,
Yes.
right? That is unique, and not have spent 3 weeks trying to create something only to find out that nobody signs up to that, right?
Exactly.
So that's how we use AI to accelerate and amplify. And one thing that Alicia said, like the client that got the group, the coaching, the person in our coaching program, she was, a bit hesitant about AI because she's like, I don't know what AI is going to send them, right?
Mm.
And I'm like, well, you can say it. You can say, this is an AI tool that I've trained with my knowledge, my program. So, this is the result you're going to get. But the key is that she's CC'd on the email that they get.
Oh, so she gets that information.
Yeah, she gets that information. The person is added to a CRM, obviously. She's CC'd on the email. That means she can reply a couple of days later.
Wow.
And because she's high ticket and she sells through calls, she got her on a call.
That is
right?
amazing. Is this a tool that you guys created for your
Yes, this is
That's amazing.
this is a tool that we created. And this is to bridge the gap between a listener that might be just ready to work with you. You're just not giving them the tool to connect. And she said, you know what? I was really worried about the email, like because it's not written by me. So really had to say, this is generated by AI. But she said the email doesn't matter. What matters is that I was able to reconnect with her.
Wow.
And then she did her magic, on the call, right?
Yeah.
So it's that connection, I think, is missing, where the listener is passive and we need to give them a way to engage, right?
Yes.
And get into action. And that is going to happen when you share from your website,
Yes.
right? Or a page where you own the next step, right? It's not going to happen on Apple or Spotify, because Apple and Spotify only want one thing, is people to stay on their platform and
Exactly.
continue, right? So they're not going to help you build your audience.
Right.
Share it over there, of course, if you get people, but the idea is that they're going to listen to a couple of episodes while they're running or gardening. And at some point, they're going to say, you know what? This Demetria, I like what she's talking about. Let me check. Because that's what I do. I would listen to a podcast when I run. But then if I want to listen and pay attention, I'm going to do it at my desk.
Right. So bring them from that secondary places over to the primary place, which is your home base.
Exactly. We know that people need to hear from you over and over and over before they're going to, connect with you. We all know that. So those places are valid, but if you rely on them to get leads, then you're really missing out. It is not going to happen. It's not. That's not what they want. They want listeners to stay over there.
And I think that's the misconception, that a lot of people who begin podcasting just maybe haven't made that connection between, oh, this is not where I need to put my focus on. Like, yes, we use Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of the platforms to promote our shows or to kind of like have our shows be out there. But it's not, the connection is not that we're placing our business activity there. That's where our home base is. And so, we have to just rethink about strategy. And I love the things that you're sharing about AI. A lot of us are thinking using AI for content curation and for ideation, for ideas, but it goes so much further than that. And I love that you kind of just like allowed us to see a peek into what else we can do with AI in our business to bring all of this together for us as podcasters, as business owners. And how do we make sure that our audience who wants to be a part of our ecosystem, who wants to join us and see what we're about and then be a part of that, how do we like create that that system so that they're part of that? AI, it can be so helpful, but we need training. We need the expertise. We need someone who understands how to bring it together. And so I feel like that is exactly what you're doing in your business. And so I'd love for you to two things. First, I'd love for you to share just kind of what really lights you up. Like, what is your favorite part of the podcasting journey for you? And then, secondly, if you can share how we can get in touch with you if we're wanting more information. What are your products, your services? What do you do to offer, and how can we reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one thing that really has been a thread in the business that we've been running for 20 years is we are problem solvers, right? So if I found that there is a problem where we can provide a solution, that gets me really, really excited. There is one thing also that comes from just my personality is that I would say I love to help, but I love for people to feel that I am helpful.
Yeah.
It's kind of like saying, I love to feel needed in a way where like I matter, I matter to people.
Mhm.
So when I work with people, what I'm excited about is what I'm going to bring to their business. So it's one thing they don't have to worry about and they can focus on what they love to do.
Yes.
This is one thing that I've learned in my years of business, in that you cannot be good at everything, right? Nobody can be. So you have to really know where you shine, like what is your what we call your unique brilliance. Like you're really, really good, and when you talk about it and like you light up,
Hmm.
and people get it, and then the rest you outsource or you systemize, or right. But you cannot be everything, and if you try to, it's going to drain your energy, right?
Yep.
And that's not how you're going to grow. So
Right.
at the beginning, yes, you have to do a bit of, everything, like to just start the thing, but very quickly being able to identify that. And that's really the key. So that's why there are things that I don't do anymore and I won't want to do because I know it doesn't light me up. So I'm
Right.
like, I've been there. You get excited because everybody's telling you should do that.
Hmm.
Great example, having my own membership.
Yeah.
At some point, people were telling me, well, you do like this amazing, we are behind some 7, 8 figure memberships. People don't know. And well, they're like, when I am in a mastermind and stuff, like, well, you should have your own membership, you know? And so you get all pumped up because people are telling you that in your head, you start thinking, I need to have my own membership. They are right. I am the membership expert, like I work with these people, like I've built, these portals that people are using. And then when I get to my desk all by myself, I'm like, do I really want to do that? Right. So you procrastinate, right? So
Yes.
you work on other things, blah, blah, blah. And then finally I realized, you know what? No, because you should do a membership or any other type of, of business if that lights you up, if that's your vision. It's not for everybody. That doesn't mean I can't help people. In fact, I know I do. I don't need proof of that. I have it already, right? So it's really, for me, what really keeps me excited is really making sure that I do things that I love.
Yes. So important. Do things that you
And
love.
it
And stay in your
requires saying no to things,
yeah. That's
right?
a big one. Saying no to what you need to, and then staying in your zone of genius, or what did you call it? Your brilliance?
A unique
Your
brilliance, your
unique
zone of
brilliance.
genius, exactly.
Yes. Yes.
That's where you shine. We underestimate the energy exchange. Even
Hmm.
like when we talk,
Hmm.
I can hear, I can feel that you love talking podcasting strategy.
Hmm.
Hopefully you feel the same,
Oh,
when I
absolutely.
talk,
Yes.
right? And this is the key, especially when you have video, because people can see your face, right?
Hmm.
But in a podcast, you can hear the voice,
Yeah.
right? And again, this is something you don't have when you write, right? So that's the unique power of podcasting. It's like
Mm.
that power to bring in these extra emotions, that are going to help build that connection.
Absolutely. I always say that podcasting is like that third dimension to content, right?
Yeah,
Whether video or audio, it just adds that layer of multidimensionality that we don't get through just reading something or, it's a really different way of connecting. And it's such a great way to position ourselves in our business with our clients or potential clients because we have that. It's extra, it's like they can hear us and they can see us before they say, I like that person, right?
exactly.
And I
Oh, I
think that's
don't.
important.
Yeah.
Or I don't.
Whatever that
Exactly.
is.
And they
Yeah.
get to make that call, but they get to
Exactly.
see the energy, whether they vibe with it or not. And so I just love podcasting for that. And thank you so much for sharing your passion about podcasting. How can we reach you? What are the services that you could offer to us? And how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, sure. So the service, the product that we have right now is called Podcast Lead Flow. And it's that AI tool that basically connects, turns an episode into a lead magnet generator so you can start a conversation.
Mhm.
So you can find that at sas.podcastleadflow.com.
Okay.
And then if you want to connect with me, I am on LinkedIn primarily, with my name, Natalie Dormer, and hopefully you can have a link below because
Yes,
I won't
for
attempt
sure.
to spell it.
Okay. It will definitely be in the show notes
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
And yeah, that's basically where you can find me primarily.
That's awesome. Natalie, this has been such a wow. Like this conversation has really allowed me to kind of think about things differently. So it's been helpful to me. I say that every time, but like every time it's different when I interview a guest, and this time it's just more like, wow, I need to look into that more. I need to learn more about this. And so you really sparked that
Yeah.
curiosity in me in a different way, and I appreciate that.
I think that people don't talk about podcasting strategy enough.
Yes.
Very early. You'd be surprised. I'm like a year ago, I interviewed 100 podcasters to
Wow.
find out where they were at. A lot of them, about half of them, had a hobby, basically, meaning no real purpose. They're
Right.
podcasting, they love it, they don't know what it brings to the business. They continue to do it because they love talking to people, right? And then I started to talk with agencies. And agencies were like, no, that's not what we do. We edit and then we publish and we repurpose, but we don't do like strategy. I'm like, what's your ROI? Why people should continue to pay you 3,000 a month
Right.
if you can't tell them, oh, episode 127 got you 5 leads this week, right? How powerful would that be? That's an ROI that matters. And they keep talking about downloads because that's all that they know. So
Yes.
that's why with Podcast Lead Flow, we're changing the game and we're saying there is another way.
That's
But
right.
you really have to start seeing podcasting as a potential lead magnet, creator. And then from there, how do you bridge that gap between the listener and the lead
Yes.
that is ready to hear more? So that's our
Okay.
mission.
Okay, well, you definitely whet our appetite for that. So we want to find out more. We're going to have the link in the show notes for Natalie and her product that is going to help us really just change the game in the way we do things as podcasters. We really need that strategy. And so, Natalie, thank you so much for being on my podcast today. You were awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Demetria.